And we're live. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Once again, sorry for the late start, but it is winter, and sometimes when it's winter, I've got to wait for it to get light enough for me to be at least be able to see where I'm going. But nevertheless, oh, Ian, good morning to you. Carol, good morning to you. Like I say, good morning to everyone. Like I say, good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Good Morning Walk. Good morning from Lubin. Good morning to you. Right from the heart of sunny old Yorkshire. True. Very true, Ben. A very good week for politics, but a bad week for the Tories overall. And what a week. Oh my word. What a week indeed. This is the, not only have we had, continuing Partygate, we've had the absolute win of all by-election wins, but also very quietly sneaked out, and surprisingly not too much fanfare, the Australian trade deal has indeed been released. And like I say, I'm waiting for, shall we say, the experts to weigh in on it fully, but needless to say, the TDLR of it is that the UK pretty much caved to all of Australians' demands. Good morning from Liverpool. Good morning to you. Another lockdown on the cards. I don't think there's going to be another lockdown till after Christmas. Oh, hang on. It's incredibly muddy today. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm not looking at the camera. I'm just trying to keep my footing. Look out this morning, and we've got pony action as well. But yeah, it's been a week, to say the least. You're saying hi from Vancouver. Good morning to you. Oliver from Vancouver. Good morning to you. But yeah, what a week it's been. I mean, my word. Pretty Bird, greetings to you. Daily Blaze, good morning to you. But yeah, what a week. What a week. And where to start? Where to start indeed. Let's start with the by-election. I mean, I've already done 2 videos this week. First of all, going over essentially the Lib Dem win. I've then gone over the review of the leader of the Lib Dems, of what he thought and how he thought he'd win. And I'm still sort of waiting for the pollsters to go in and have a look at the area and go through what they say. I'm also waiting for, because there's eventually going to be one, a Tory after action report to see what they say. Was there reason for loss in North Shropshire? Because that will be very interesting to read as well. It's I'm not going to lie, it was a win. And like I say, you know, I don't like the Lib Dems as a party, but that's probably another subject for another day. And probably not best to, you know, I don't want to really lay the foot into them today, especially when they've had such a really fantastic and truly well-deserved win. Because I've heard some of the stories that some of the ground team who have really been doing the work out there, really been doing the work out there in the run-up not only to this by-election but the by-election itself, and they managed to pull out an absolute corker of a win. An absolute corker of a win. And I don't know if you've seen a couple of like the follow-up pieces, but I did wonder, of course, during those videos, came out before I made them, what would this be reflected if the Liberal Democrats could pull it off in a general election? Well, it looks like that in a general election, the Tories, well, not the Tories, the Lib Dems could take, thank you very much, Gathonic. Hope you have a happy holiday season. Oh, thank you very much for the walks. Yeah, thank you very much for that as well. Thank you much as well for your support. Jennifer, hello to you. But if they can replicate it, and this is the big if. Oh, good morning from the heart of Bavaria. Good morning to you from the heart of Bavaria. Welcome to the heart of Yorkshire. Deepest, darkest Yorkshire. If they can pull this off, then they would win 57 seats from the Tories. And that's no mean feat if they can pull that off. But they'd really have to go for it. And as we've said before, and this is what the Greens, this is what happens every time after a local election. The Greens come out, do really well in like local council elections and say, oh my God, this is the year we get more than one MP. And yet they never ever manage to replicate that success on a national level. The big question is, can the Lib Dems maintain that momentum that they have now up until potentially the next general election? That is the true question we have to be asking. Because if they can do that, and they can take those 57 seats, combine that with the fact that in the north, a lot of those red wall Tory seats that they managed to take at 2019, they might very well lose those seats as well. And if we could see that, as was once from a leaked document, just after the 2019 general election, the Tories played out a game plan of potential general election victories. Then potentially the Tories would see a complete and utter collapse. Potentially. And you are right, Bakura. I do think that they could, but we'll have to see. But then again, no one thought they'd be able to win Cheshire and Amersham. No one thought they'd be able to win North Shropshire either. Those were meant to be two safe seats. They went, and North Shropshire as well was meant to be the safest of safe seats. What does this mean for these other seats? You know, we are entering a very interesting stage of British politics where at the next general election, it could be anyone's game to win. Now, of course, the Tories, as they normally do, they parachute a candidate in. In fact, most of the Tories aren't from the seats that they are representing anyway. So the fact that they, once again, parachuted a candidate in from Birmingham who had never been before to North Shropshire in his life wasn't a good look. But it just goes to show you the complete arrogance that the Conservative Party has. And this isn't something new, by the way, this arrogance that they've got. This is like the de facto switch for them. They always go completely arrogant and go completely out of touch, as we've seen. You know, we had the views of Theresa Coffey on social welfare. We've had, you know, all those Tories openly rebelling on the new Plan B restrictions. But you look at public polling and the public are overwhelmingly in favour of the Plan B restrictions. They're out of touch. And nothing says that more than the attitude of the Red Tories. And we've talked about the Red Tories before. These are the MPs who won those red wall seats up in the north in 2019. They all know full well that they can't go full Tory, that they've got to distance themselves at least from being seen as, shall we say, like the rest of the Tory party. Because if you think that the animosity against the Tory party disappeared in 2019, no, it hasn't. It's still very much alive and well. There might have been a lot of people that year in 2019 at the general election who were willing to hold their noses and vote Tory. But the only reason that happened was Boris Johnson, of all people. He was the palatable... like I say, good morning to everyone who's joined us, by the way, so far. I'm sorry if it looks like I'm ignoring your comments or anything like that, but this morning is very, very muddy, and I'm just trying to make sure that, well, I stay up on my feet. So if I do ignore your comment or I don't read it, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm trying to make sure I stay up on my feet this morning, because it is incredibly muddy. I very much think, Bakura, the coronavirus pandemic, the fact that Brexit is not going to fulfill any of its promises, the fact that levelling up is just a completely vapid slogan that means absolutely nothing, combine that, of course, with the slogan Global Britain, which also means exactly nothing. What have the Tories got to offer the next election except empty, vapid slogans? And you can only continue doing that for so long before the voting public realises the Tories have got nothing to offer. So, as I said just this week, the Abraham Lincoln quote, you can only fool people, most of the people some of the time. Sooner or later, people will catch on. This is why you should never, ever take the voting public for granted. Regardless of what you think of different people in different regions, whether they voted for Brexit or not, you've never got to take them for granted. Because if you do, they will very quickly give you a swift boot to the rear. I think this is what the Tories are going to experience in the next general election. That's potentially what's going to happen at the next general election. You know, and if the Lib Dems can maintain that, then it's a possibility. Not only that, but there is potentially another by-election coming up, not in the too distant future, which is again going to be in one of these seats that could be very vulnerable to get another Lib Dem victory. So that is on the cards in the future. But of course, as I've said before, Boris Johnson is only going to be kept around for as long as he is seen as being an electoral plus. The Tories didn't mind Partygate. They didn't mind all the rest of the guff that happened, just as so long as Boris kept them popular and in the polls. But with all this stuff coming out constantly, as I said it would just be eventually the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that's what we've seen from this, that these past couple of things have just been the straw that's broken the camel's back. And I think the public have now and well and truly turned on Boris. I think that the fact that they've been continuously down in the polls for the past 2 months, Boris's popularity itself has also taken a colossal nosedive. It's obvious now Boris is now an electoral liability. And especially when, you know, you've heard about some of the activists, the Lib Dem activists who have been on the doorstep. They've all said Boris Johnson is the liability. And I think that now that the MPs are off for Christmas, I think you're going to see a lot of Tory MPs this Christmas seriously asking themselves, is it worth keeping Boris Johnson around till the next general election? Is it worth it? Because that really is the true question here. Oh, Judas Cantwell called me Tad. How do you think the reductions in seats from 650 to 600 will affect the next results? Can't the Tories recover in the polls with a new leader? This is what we're going to get to, Ted. So, thank you very much as well for the donation, by the way. This is where the action gets interesting. This is where it heats up. Because you are right. Might a, shall we say, new, fresh-faced, very popular leader, especially in the Tory Party and the non-parliamentary party, can they turn the car around, so to say? Because there's a very interesting event, as I'm sure you all know, coming up. Rishi Sunak very recently was out in California, along, you may have noticed, with a lot of other Conservative MPs. Because they are on, at the moment, these Brexiteer Tories are out on a massive offensive, and I mean massive offensive, to go over to America, and they are desperate to try and get a trade deal going with America. Because that was the big Brexit win. The fact that you had just a couple of days ago, can't remember her name, an MP came out and said, for some reason, the UK was going to bypass Joe Biden and instead do deals with the states. That's not how the USA works. That's not how the USA works at all. Not only that, she's also done a very, very hilarious speech. I think I retweeted it on my Twitter timeline. That basically saying that Britain is on this libertarian, deregulation, free market fundamentalist path, which is incredibly strange because, as we've said before, that's not what the voting public actually wants. They don't want deregulation. They actually do want strong regulation when it comes to it. So, Rishi Sunak, obviously, in America very recently, but of course, with the new vastly and very quickly rising rates that are happening, we are seeing hospitality, bars, all crying out saying, we are in trouble. We need help. You know, we need the government to step in. But this isn't, and he's completely against, you know, the Tory Party ethos. They are not a government that wants to be interventionist. Neither does Rishi Sunak, who, again, currently this is a two-horse race to who might replace Boris. Now, I've said this before, Liz Truss, the most popular member in the Tory Party by far, followed by Rishi Sunak, but Liz Truss still overwhelmingly popular. And this, what's going to happen probably in this week, maybe even next week, could be what makes or breaks Rishi Sunak's bid to be Prime Minister. Because it's been said before, I don't think Boris will survive. Because they've all said, as was coming out of by the head of the 1922 committee, if Boris can't turn it around, he's gone. How is Boris going to turn it around? He can't. And Sunak has to help out these businesses. He absolutely has to. Because there's two ways that can happen here. And probably going to have two very, very big political implications for not only the Tories, but as we said at the beginning, Rishi Sunak's chances of being the next PM. There's all these restaurants, bars, and the entire hospitality industry is in complete meltdown at the moment. There was an article this week about about a restaurateur who's lost at least 650k in bookings alone just this month. So this is not good. This is not good for the hospitality industry. And they are very, very much hoping that Rishi Sunak can come in and help them, either with furlough, grants, loans, something to help them. Because if he does help them, then just like as we saw initially at the start of the pandemic, with him bringing in the furlough, all those extra, economic, we saw all those extra economic, subsidies that he offered to them. Eat Out to Help Out, obviously, one of them. But while it might have been really popular, of course, get rid of that. Ugh. While that might have been really popular, of course, with a good section indeed of the Tory Party, you've got to remember that the Tory Party is currently in the grip of the far-right radicals who are complete free market fundamentalists, who are complete and utter right-wing libertarians, and are completely against the idea of market interventionism by the government. And they were incredibly against this. In fact, I don't know if people have seen this, but old JRM put out a tweet saying that if businesses can't survive during what is meant to be their most busiest period, then they deserve to fail. Again, as we said at the beginning, Tory Party, completely out of lockstep with the rest of the public. But that's the situation that Sunak finds himself in. If he does help out the hospitality industry with something, then it might even indeed secure his PMship. If he doesn't help out them out, yes, he might be maybe in the good graces, of course, of shall we say, the people who control the party, but he might find himself now vastly unpopular in other parts of the party that would indeed support him. And we're going to have to see, again, what he does in the next, probably next week, because that will pretty much determine whether or not Rishi Sunak becomes Prime Minister. And we're going to have to see what the reaction is from the different sections and now the multiple parties in the Tory Party. If they can obviously smooth this over and get him in, then I think it will be Rishi Sunak, because a lot of the some very muddy parts here, so if you'll excuse me if I'm not paying attention to you. The big majority of the Conservative Party is very, very much on the side of popularity, and especially who appeals to voter public. And of course, as we said at the beginning, Rishi Sunak got a lot of popularity from the public thanks to his, economic interventionism. But of course, the big question is how you pay for that. Now, I've said it before, we do a wealth tax. And of course, the Tories aren't going to do that. Of course. Countries like Argentina did a wealth tax to pay for their, shall we say, pandemic costs, and that their wealth tax not only paid for their paid for the costs of the pandemic, but they even had enough left over to start investing in post-pandemic recovery. So whenever anyone says that a wealth tax wouldn't work, it absolutely would. And of course, there are multiple conversations we probably have to have about having a wealth tax, but that is probably an entire video to itself. We will have to see. Because whatever Sunak does in the next couple of days will make or break his potential leadership bid and run. Of course, main candidate and contender in all this is, of course, Liz Truss. Easily, by a country mile, the most popular member. Even more popular, of course, than Boris Johnson. But that's not difficult to really do at the moment. But even when Johnson was at the height of his popularity, Liz Truss was very much, shall we say, nipping at his heels in that popularity contest. So there are those two main contenders and candidates. So you really, if you want to know when there's going to be an election, you've got to keep your eyes on those two people in particular. Because not only are they themselves trying to secure donors for a leadership bid run, but they are also very heavily involved in trying to lobby MPs to back them. And of course, they've been having, shall we say, lunches to get to know their new fellow MPs, which is what it's called. But in reality, both Sunak and Truss have been heavily trying to court any new members of the Tory Party and try and win them over to their side. So that has been their game. And like I say, to trigger a leadership election, it's only going to take 57 letters. 57, again, not a lot, sent to the 1922 committee to ask for a vote of no confidence, which in itself will then kick it off. Because any vote of no confidence is not going to happen this week. It's going to happen in the new year. I very, very much think that a lot of Tories are now playing the numbers game. Is it worth keeping Boris? Is it worth holding on to him? Do we keep him for a year and then get rid of him? So then at least we've got a year to try and refresh ourselves and rebrand ourselves from, we're not Johnson's government anymore, honest, to something that's, shall we say, more electable and will keep them in power. Because that's, at the end of the day, all the Tories really care about, maintaining and being in power. And they are incredibly worried now from the threat they now face from essentially very much a centrist party, which are the Lib Dems in a nutshell, really. Although arguably you could call them right centrists, but I don't know. Right centrist, left centrist. Either way, they're a very centrist party. You can easily say that they're now facing a threat from the centre. But traditionally, they've always managed to, and been far more worried, of course, by threat from the right. And they are worried, I think they're very, very worried, that Nigel Farage might reappear and start pushing hard again on them on the right from an immigration angle. And that's what they're most worried about. But I think they're also now worried about the threat they now face from the Lib Dems. And this has really highlighted that fact. They are now in that trouble spot. So it will be a very, very, shall we say, somber day, a somber weekend indeed, down at not only in number 10, but in Tory HQ as well. Indeed, for many Tory MPs this Christmas, they will be having, shall we say, definitely be having to have some very deep thoughts about the future of their party. Because as we said before, the voters in the Conservative Party are very, very much on the right wing, but for at least the past decade or so, they have been electing, without even realising it, a lot more right-wing Tory MPs. Ugh. Oh, the mud. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you can hear me squelching through this mud. But I don't know if you can see the mud. Like I say, this is... Ugh. Sorry if I'm not paying attention to the screen today. Like I say, it's very, very muddy down here today. So I'm just going to keep an eye on where I'm putting my feet today, especially on this part of the path. So, needless to say, this does, I think, raise some very, very serious questions about what could now happen potentially at the next general election. Ed Davey, of course, leader of the Liberal Democrats, has come out and said that he is indeed in favour of forming an electoral pact with the Greens and Labour. Of course, I haven't heard any rumblings from the Green Party about what they might say, what they might do. And Labour, of course, have been very silent about this whole... very silent about the whole win. But while they did indeed lose a lot of their voters to the Lib Dems as the Tories, they aren't, shall we say, worried as that much by the looks of it, which is incredibly worrying. I personally would like to see an electoral pact with them done. Indeed, they could very easily sweep Labour out, but of course, if they do go into an electoral pact, then we've got to see what it is this pact is going to offer. And as I've said before, I think any, shall we say, future coalition will involve a change in the voting system, which again will be good because, quite frankly, our current system is terrible and desperately needs a change. But also, as I've said before, House of Lords desperately needs some urgent reform. I think that would be incredibly easy to pass. I think you'd get a lot of people backing that fact. And I've said before, turn the House of Lords into a House of regional representatives voted in by a single transferable vote system. That way, every vote will indeed matter. And then you will get a proper, true representation in a second electable house of what the public actually generally thinks. And again, as we said before, when any electoral analysis is done under what might change, of course, a proportional representational system pretty much guarantees that the Tories never get into any power whatsoever. Their popularity, of course, throughout the country is never at any more than 35 to 37%, meaning that they would never able to gain full control of a proportional representational parliament. They would have to make deals, coalition deals to get into power. But I think if you saw that happen, and that indeed did happen to the House of Commons, I think you see the Tory Party go into moments of crisis. They would push really hard, and I think push even harder for what they've been doing recently, going really down hard the far-right libertarian free market fundamentalist path. Again, a lot of sounds like word soup there, but indeed that is the path they are pushing down. In fact, as you may remember me saying a lot on these walks, that the true battle and one of the many ideological fights in the Tory Party that was going to happen was the levelling up agenda versus global Britain, because you cannot have levelling up, because that will undermine the global Britain agenda, because a levelling up agenda does require lots of investment, would indeed need to be a bit protectivist of industries to help them get up on their feet, would need subsidies, all sorts of investment into the country, which again, if the Tories had managed to do, not only would that be again incredibly shocking, but would actually indeed have properly helped the country. But of course, that was never ever on the cards. It was never going to happen. And I think people have now really seen that once again they've said and promised, oh, we'll level up the country. But again, it's just become a soundbite with no policy attached to it. I can't even tell you what the policy is for levelling up. And of course, global Britain, the very much vaunted trade push, valued very much by the Brexiteers, hence why we've seen a lot of activity in the past week or so, for them desperately trying to lobby Joe Biden to try and get him to do a trade deal with the UK, because again, that was very much the goal of getting a trade deal with the US, because if they could get a trade deal with the US, then what they could do was essentially just dismantle a whole bunch of regulation overnight with one trade deal and not have to go through Parliament. Indeed, very recently, we've seen the UK REACH, the UK chemicals programme, is going under a vastly new deregulationary force, to the point where companies, if they are using toxic chemicals, don't actually have to tell the regulator or even the government that they're using potentially dangerous toxic chemicals. Nope, it's now a voluntary system. So, as you all very well know, I'm all about getting active, getting involved in your local politics. So if you are in the UK, that has, shall we say, rung alarm bells in your head that that is indeed a stupid policy. Why are the government doing this? By the way, this is part of the government are doing this as part of their much vaunted Henry VIII powers, where they can essentially take away regulation at a whim. It's not even going to go through Parliament, this change. The video I did just a couple of days ago on this very thing, go watch it, read the article, get up on the knowledge of it, write to your MP. I've already written to my MP, Dan Jarvis, to ask him to get him to say and get this, to bring this up in Parliament, that this is unacceptable. The fact that you are essentially asking people using potentially poisonous chemicals, not only a danger to public health, the environment, consumer rights, needs to be brought up in Parliament. I think this could be turned into a proper fight, because even the UK chemicals trade bodies, watchdogs, environmental groups are all against these changes, and are asking, why on earth are you doing this? So again, if that does worry you, and it should worry you, because I'm just going to be Nostradamus here, but I can already see in the future, shall we say, environmental consequences of this happening. And then the government going, whoops. But of course, by then it'll be too late. And of course, the environmental consequences could hang around for, well, decades to come. It's just something that, well, we've got to watch out for. Because as always, especially with those Henry VIII powers, this can happen overnight at a single glance. And like I say, that chemical deregulation story did not get as much coverage as I thought it might do, which is sort of very disappointing. But if you are, again, someone who is very much pro-rejoin, then this is the type of stuff that we have to push, get it out there to the public and get them to realise just what's going on. So overall, it's been an interesting week. The Australian trade deal, that's one that we haven't sort of discussed yet. Oh, hang on. We might have to just go around here. There seem to be some cows fighting, so we'll just take the long route around. So, the Australian trade deal, that's going to hurt farmers a lot. And in fact, one of the things that came out of the North Shropshire by-election victory was that a lot of farmers who make up quite a substantial base of the Tory voter, who vote for them, this new deal is going to hurt them so bad, because the big worrying thing that we've seen about, the tariffs on beef and lamb. Initially, of course, they were saying, oh, it's going to be 15 years phased in, boom, 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 that'll be fine. No, it's now 10 years. So in 2031, essentially, when already our farming industry is already finding it difficult to cope on this, they're going to have even more problems in just 10 years' time. And the thing is, once you've negotiated a trade deal, it's very, very hard, and especially something like this that has been so advantageous to Australia, because, as we said before, you look at the deal and the UK more or less rolled over and has accepted all of Australia's demands. Again, it's not even going to help our economy that much. The government's come out and said, by its own numbers, it's going to be 0.08%, which again, in the game of, countrywide national GDP is nothing, when we're already losing 4%, probably potentially more than that, from leaving the EU. None of these trade deals are covering up for that gap in the economy. Not only that, but we also have to worry about the threat of stagflation. A lot of people and economists have said that they're worried about Britain sliding back into its 70s economy, where for every single gain of GDP, there is an equal or even greater gain in inflation. Meaning, for every single piece of GDP we rise in, we find ourselves wiped away. There you go. Baby pony. Or is it a little Shetland? I can't tell. So this is indeed, it's a very worrying time going into sort of the UK economy. And as every single economist has said from day one, Brexit does not help the UK economy, it only damages it. So we've got a very, very he's following me. So we've got a very, very precarious economic situation, which the Tories aren't going to be able to get us out with, by the way. This is indeed a nightmare scenario for the UK economy. Because all the Tories can do is austerity, austerity, austerity. That is their default mode for repairing the economy. In fact, Rishi Sunak is fully prepared to do that. Something, again, we have to be worried about in the not too distant future, if he ever becomes PM, of course. But of course, we've got Dominic Raab trying to take out human rights laws, which is fun, as always. Oh, morning. Very muddy down there today. But yeah, needless to say, Rishi Sunak, shall we say, is big leadership run, and his chances probably rest to what he will do to help out the hospitality industry in the next week or so. So watch out for Rishi Sunak, what he does this week. That will be very interesting to watch. Also, again, keep your eyes peeled on Liz Truss, what she's been up to. But there probably won't be too much, shall we say, manoeuvres going on. After all, it is now the Christmas break for MPs. They've stand up, shall we say, and gone on their Christmas holidays. So if anything happens, expect it to happen in the new year. That is the key takeaway from this. Keep your eyes peeled what's going to happen, but I wouldn't expect anything major to happen on the Boris Johnson front at least until next year. I can't see them doing that. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Like I say, a week can indeed be a long time in politics. And oh my God, yeah. The guy who was doing... Oh, I got a bit jealous there, I think. Watch out for the party investigation, because the guy who was investigating the parties has himself had to resign because it turns out he himself had a party. So, you know, I had a friend say not too long ago, political satire. You literally almost couldn't write what is actually going on in our current party. It's insane. I'm seeing a lot. Carol says, gone by Feb. I don't know. Again, we'll have to see. But again, you are right. It's all to play for, and it's no longer a matter of if, but when now for Boris Johnson. And I think if he does indeed go, potentially it could be early next year. We'll have to see. But as always, we've come to the end of our good morning walk today. And as always, thank you very much to the people who have donated some money today. Thank you very much to the people that did donate today. Like I say, your support of the channel is very, very much appreciated. Like I say, you can help out the channel right now by hitting the like and share button. That will be very, very much appreciated. And of course, if you aren't subscribed, hit the subscribe button to see more videos covering politics and the ongoing, quite frankly, bizarre nature of our current political system as it continues its downward spiral into almost absolute chaos. So, as always, thank you very much to everyone who does support the camel, everyone who does support the channel. Like I say, it is very, very much appreciated. Like I say, links down below to my Patreon page. And of course, there's a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And thank you to everyone who does help support me that way. Also, the YouTube memberships are open as well. So if you want to support the channel that way, you can do. And of course, as always, thank you very much for coming to join us today on the Good Morning Walk, regardless of your political leanings. It's always fun to have you in the chat, as always. So go out, have a fun weekend. I've got my booster jab booked for Monday, so I'll be boosted on Monday. Oh, Cathalo G, thank you very much for that. A bit of Irish there. Thanks, and let's see if we can pronounce this. Dethani Shvansha Mathal, or I've probably butchered that fully. But yes, have a very absolutely fantastic weekend. If you can't be safe, but at least be sensible. But yes, do go out and enjoy yourselves. I'm hopefully maybe see if I can go to sneak off and see the new Spider-Man film as well. But of course, thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you all next weekend for another Good Morning Walk.